All right, let's go ahead and get started because this is an action-packed hour. I have a question. How many people were in this room for the last session? Oh, I can't use the same presentation again. Oh, man. All right. Well, we actually are going to be talking a little bit more about best practices and examples, things that actually work to hopefully inspire you leaving ad tech to try some new experiments, maybe convince management of some things that you should try or that you should pilot. So I'm only going to talk for about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to bring on our first speakers. But in the spirit of sharing examples, I put together one that I thought would be incredibly relevant, poignant, maybe riveting, to say the least. Comes down to an example of how brands are experimenting with social platforms around celebrity endorsements, but also this idea of the new celebrity, the web-lebrity, the internet famous, the influencer, people who are highly connected. And when I think about influence, when I think about the people who inspire me to take action in the real world, I can think of no other than Charlie Sheen. You probably agree, I know. But it was very interesting to see that this gentleman had a meteoric rise and an equal meltdown, but his rise on Twitter was nothing less than phenomenal. And Adly, which is a new type of ad network for Twitter that helped him get onto Twitter, but not only that, but helped him secure his first endorsement for internships.com. And I wanted to share a little bit of his experience and internship.com's experience online so that we might be able to take a look at how to better work with new voices, new representatives to represent the brand. I need to see by a show of hand how many of you have Tiger Blood. Is that even cool anymore? Was that so last week? I don't even know. But it is a drink, by the way, and this is a really cool dispenser. But what I want to explain is just how much influence can have from a hashtag. This was the hashtag for the Tiger Blood intern that Charlie Sheen was seeking through his partnership with internship.com. It was one tweet that was sent. It looked exactly like this. He's looking to hire a winning intern. That tweet, that click-through, earned in the first hour 95,000 uniques. That number is still growing, and I actually stopped counting. I don't think there's enough zeros now. But it still continues to perform very well. In that first hour, it reached 181 countries. It yielded, in the first day, 74,000 applications, which, by the way, I got to talk to some of the people who submitted those applications. We're talking about reporters from ABC News. I mean, a lot of people that we probably admire wanted to become a Tiger Blood intern. This promoted tweet, by the way, in 48 hours grew up to about 400,000 clicks. Tiger Blood intern became a worldwide trending topic. Charlie Sheen went from 0 to, if you use this score for any type of index, from a 0 to 93 on Clout, which means he's pretty influential according to Clout. More influential than Barack Obama, which is insane. Let's let that sink in. Guess we'll see what happens in November. Now, is that winning? Possibly. You know, a lot of people will say that, of course it did that well. The guy was all over the news. He was all over Twitter. People would see that this would, of course, be a natural opportunity for a paid endorsement. But if you follow the gossip rags, it's not uncommon to see a celebrity having some drama in their life. It seems to be what makes celebrity rags go round. And if I were a media buyer seeing these numbers, I would continue to experiment. I'd look at who's having a meltdown of the moment, who's having controversy or hotspot of the moment, and who happens to be a client of Adly, and start experimenting with these ads. Not that I'm being serious, but in all reality, it represents a new form of media buying. It represents a new opportunity to connect with a different voice for your brand. Whoever that voice is for you requires identification to better understand who's influencing your market. There are free tools available today. If it's not Charlie Sheen, maybe it's somebody else. Maybe it's someone who's an authority on your subject for your brand. Maybe it's not just a mommy blogger, which seems to be the new A-list celebrity online, but somebody who happens to be a notable authority, an individual who's respected within their community, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, whether it's their blog. These tools like, for example, Impact or Tracker or Peer Index can help you find who those individuals are so that you can experiment with these types of programs to see what works for you. Now with that riveting introduction, I would like to bring David Smitth up from Mediasmith and also Aaron Mann from Socialarc. Please welcome him. Getting my Vanna White skills going on here.
Thanks, Brian. Brian offered to help me out with this because I'm a Mac guy.
Not that I'm a PC guy, but
really confused. Excellent. Thanks. So I don't know how many of you were here for Guy's presentation yesterday. It was great. I remember seeing him back in 2006 when a partner and I were launching a social media monitoring platform. And we go to see him, and he talks about 10 slides, 30-point font, 20 minutes. We come out of that, and we look at our presentation. It's 47 slides, a lot of 12-point font. And it would give us about 5 days, and we could get you through it, not in great detail. And sure enough, when we netted it down and really tried to tell the story succinctly, it was better. So Dave and I have a challenge today because we're going to try to cover an entire industry in 9 slides. So we'll see how we do. So the subject is social intelligence, and we're going to talk about some platforms, some ways to get the most out of social intelligence. And one of the things that strikes us is that people are really disappointed a lot of times in what they're getting out of social intelligence right now. There's a big promise there. We promise to measure, inform, and execute, and let's talk a little bit about what those mean. Measurement's not just campaign measurement, but if I've got a hypothesis, something I want to test, I should be able to use social intelligence to find out what are people saying about it and how many are saying it. So I want to be able to measure. I want to be able to inform campaigns. I want to inform customer service. I want to inform product development and so on. And finally, and most important, we think, is execute. I want to be able to optimize in real time on a campaign. I want to be able to run social CRM off that platform. So these are all the things that I want it to do, but a lot of times it just doesn't. And the problem is that we're dealing with this mass of social media. It's chaotic. It's 140-character tweets mixed in with full blog posts about your product or your brand. It's really hard to find out what's going to be relevant to you and then pull that out and turn that into something that is actionable intelligence. And I really like the last session Brian talked about intelligence. And that's really what the difference is can we make it actionable? We have the good fortune of working with Visa on some social strategy and social marketing initiatives. And if you were at the keynote yesterday morning, you heard Antonio talk about a way of looking at a social organization that was audience first, activate through 3 social principles, and then activate in paid, owned, and shared. And that model starts with audience first. But you've got to know what the audience is saying. So the question is, how do we get there? How do we go from the mess that's social media on one side to actionable intelligence that we can use today on another side? How do we avoid having a dashboard nobody logs into or a landscape report that's like 200 PowerPoint slides sitting on a shelf somewhere? Well, the answer to that is it's a process. And we're not going to go through the process today, but what's important about this slide is there's a lot of people on that slide. It takes a lot of effort to pull out the value. If you expect the machine to do it, you're going to be disappointed. It's not going to work. When you start putting in a process to go from the chaos that's social media to things that are actually actionable about and around your brand and around your competitors, then you're going to have a process that's going to give you good results. And so with that, we look at how many human steps sit in the process, and through that lens, let's take a look at what are some of the big buckets of tools that you can use. And we've just got some examples in here. There's a wiki out there that's got over 145 social media monitoring tools. They includes everybody on this list. It includes a bunch of free or near free tools. There's 145 things to choose from. That's a lot. It's really daunting if you're a brand marketer trying to figure out which one of these should I use. How can I decide between this one or that one? Well, some ways to frame it are there are the free and near free tools. You're going to have no license cost or very little. Now, the trade-off on that is that to get real value out of it, you're going to have to do a lot of work. You're not going to have a lot of data analytics tools. You're not going to have a lot of ways to filter and manipulate data. The data is going to tend to be messy. The free tools tend not to have the full feed of social that you might want. So, for example, they're probably not paying Twitter over $1 million a year for the full Twitter feed. And so you're going to have to use multiple tools. You're going to have to work with it, a lot of effort in. Kind of up on the other end of the spectrum are people that are going to offer you an end-to-end solution. They're going to come in, they're going to give you a landscape report, they're going to listen to your business objectives, and they're going to do all that heavy lifting. It's going to be fairly expensive, but it's going to, as a brand marketer, it's going to take a lot less of your time. And sitting in the middle are the enterprise platforms. They're not inexpensive. They tend to orient towards the power user, but they're really useful tools, and this includes Sysomos, Visible Technologies, Scout, Alterian, and Radian 6. So if you kind of think about this lens, and I want to turn it around a little bit, and I want to take a look at this on a different matrix, where we start looking at these broad buckets. What can we do with them? What's going to drive us the most value? And what's going to drive the most business applications for us? So business applications are everything from product development to social CRM. It's the flexibility to have APIs so that you can have hooks into your back-end systems. So when we start looking at it on that lens, the free and near-free tools are going to be really limited. We're basically going to be able to use it, and Brian had some good examples of this in his last talk, to inform some of the things that we're doing. It's going to be hard to use it for active measurement in a consistent way, and it's going to be hard to use it for social CRM. When you go to the end-to-end lens, you're going to be able to inform, and you're going to be able to measure, but you're still not at that real-time level. You're still not able to do social CRM off of it, or get a campaign finding on Thursday and have a full report and analysis on it by Monday morning that you can go to your CMO with and say, hey, this is what I think we should do about what happened last week. And to do that, we really recommend using one of the enterprise platforms. At Socialarc, we use 3 or 4 of these because they all work differently, and you need the right tool for the job. Some are better at social CRM. Some set up dashboards more easily. Some do data analytics better. So you really want to choose what's the right tool for the job. Within that, my section closes with resourcing right. So what you want to do is take a look first at what are my objectives? What are all the things that I want out of social intelligence? Is it product development, social CRM? Is it finding out what my competitors are doing? Is it measuring and tracking campaigns? Is it all those? Then you want to take a look at the tools, and you want to make sure that you're picking the right one for the job. And sometimes you're just going to have to bite the bullet and get more than one. And finally, you want to take a look at the people, because going back to that process slide, there's a lot of human intervention needed, and you really need to know who are my resources internally, if I'm a brand marketer, at my agency partners, that are going to be able to deliver me the intelligence that I want when I want it. Now, the good news is, if you set it up right and do all these things, you get some really good outcomes.
Thanks. And some of those outcomes include expanding your reach beyond what your paid media can deliver for you. Include audience development, finding out more about the audience that is interacting with your brand, and demonstrating ROI. In the end, you're going to be paying for these tools, you're going to be paying for manpower, and you've got to show that your efforts are going to pay for themselves. Expanding reach. Here's an example from one of Mediasmith's clients, Citrix Online, for their GoToMeeting product. And this is comparing 2 years here, 2010 and 2011 in first quarter. And a significant thing here is a big increase in the social networks, the Facebooks of the world, and a decrease in the microblogging, the Twitters of the world. So this is a trend. Now, the Twitter activity is still the greatest amount, but when you have something that's increasing by 90%, you say, wow, there's dialogue, where the dialogue is happening is changing. And that can be an important thing to understand where you ought to include some of your emphasis in the future. And the other kind of intelligence that we can get out of this relative to emphasis is we can look and see where the conversations occur. And when we see that on the right-hand side, some of these vehicles where the conversations occur, it gives you some intelligence as to where maybe some of your paid media efforts or some of your earned media effort, where that emphasis should be relative to distribution, because you can't put resources out there against everything. So you can get some intelligence as to where you can emphasize things in order to leverage that expanded reach opportunity. Audience development, you can find new targets. This doesn't show the year over year, but what we found in looking at this data was there was a significant increase 1 year versus the next in the female target, right? You take a look at your data, and you can find this for many, many targets. So what we have out of this is the answer that we shouldn't just look maybe at just a male target, that the females are interacting more with this tool, GoToMeeting, and we need to be considering them not only for, again, our social media efforts, but it gives us intelligence that might guide some of our paid media efforts down the road. And also, you can see not only what's happening with your product, but you can use the same tools to find out what's going on with your competitors. And you can then measure the delta between what's going on with your products and what's going on with your competitors, and really get an idea as to where you have leverage. Lastly is demonstrating ROI. Now, we've got this in here because a lot of people like to think that, well, social media is so soft and fuzzy that the problem is that we really can't measure it. It doesn't have any Nielsen numbers. It doesn't have any ComScore numbers. We really can't measure what's going on, and I really can't prove to somebody that what I'm doing is effective. Well, you can, and you start by establishing a baseline. Do it like you would any kind of market research, which is use the tool before you start the campaign. Use the tool at the start of your metrics so that you know what your baseline is, because it's not going to be zero. You're going to have measurement. You're going to have some things going on about your brand. And then show a correlation between the marketing activity that you launch and the volume that's going on, as well as the sentiment. Because it's, as you know, it's not just about the volume, it's about the quality of what people are saying about your brand. And sometimes lower volume, but certain sentiments can mean a lot more. So be careful to not just look at volumetric things. A little sidebar, and we talked about leaving this in or taking this out, but people use focus groups, I think probably overuse focus groups to measure things. Focus groups are an indicator as to where things are. Well, this maybe is the new focus group. This is less expensive than a focus group, and it gives you a lot more quantifiable information. So if you think that, like I do, that some of our brands are going too far in the use of focus groups, consider some of these tools for lower cost and more measurability than a focus group. And lastly, the important thing, as Aaron said, is it allows for real-time measurement and informs the campaign optimization. I mean, you talked about, getting a report on a Thursday and being able to take it to management the next Monday and say, here's what we need to do about what's going on last week. And this is really important, the real-time optimization. So it's important to measure the aspects from the trends as well as the absolute data. And that's what we have to talk about here. Thanks.
Oh, with time to spare even. All right, good job, guys. Excellent. Well, I would like to now bring up Jodi Manning from TouchStorm and someone whom I personally admire, Veronica Belmont. Please welcome up on stage.
Should I try? Oh, can you guys hear me? I'm Jodi. Woohoo! Here we are. And this is Veronica. I am the head of digital content at TouchStorm. And right now I hope that all of you out there with your Blackberries and other are actually binging or Googling TouchStorm to find out who in the world we are. Okay, so go ahead and do that. Feel free. Go ahead and do that. We make online video content. And we actually believe very, very strongly that the video content itself is social media. And Brian, in his earlier session, talked a lot about how you have to provide the user or the consumer with a valuable asset. And the reason that we develop, make, distribute content this way is because it's answering certain questions. So one of the ways that we do this is we bring in experts to talk about particular subjects, which is why Veronica is here with me and what we're going to show you in a few minutes, because I have some examples that we brought along so you can see actually what we're up to. But we use these influencers to really drive home the video message and answer a lot of these questions. So if you looked me up on Twitter, you'd see I have absolutely no following. But if you looked up Veronica, you'd see something quite different. And she's going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. So next I want to talk to you a little bit about the fact that our videos are actually, they're not designed to be viral or entertainment, but they do gain some tremendous TV-like reach just by the way that we do these. So let's take a look at a few of those so you can see what we're up to. Okay. Sorry, let me get my video up here. Here it comes.
Hi there, I'm Veronica Belmont. Today I'm going to show you how to choose the right high-definition television for you. Like this. Start with an HD TV with 3D capabilities.
Hi, I'm Nigel Barker. Today I'm going to show you how to capture great outdoor photos and video using a single camera. Like this. So shooting video at night, you want to get the whole scene? Well, a camera like this one has a feature that can capture breathtaking and high angles or a pristine video. No one likes a stiff photographer.
Hey, I'm Joe for Sony. I'm here to talk to you about how to make a vlog of your vacation.
So we do this for a lot of different brands across a bunch of different categories. This obviously was Sony, and it was consumer electronics. In this particular case, Sony had been our client for a long time, and they came to us and they really wanted to know, how can we start to reach consumers at the top of the purchase funnel instead of down at the bottom of the purchase funnel, which is where their paid campaigns really work for them, because at that point it really becomes a price war. So we showed them basically with this series, this library of videos, and there was about 30 of them at the time. You can see them all. There are many, many different places. But we showed them how they could actually take this editorial video and get to people before they even knew there was a camera. that they needed in their life. And the way that we did this and the way that we do it for all of our clients is we actually start by using organic search data. And we look at the terms and we find out what are people really searching for. And in this particular case, it was things like how to take a photograph of a baby and how to take a sports photo outdoors or how to get a great stadium shot or things like that. Things that Nigel Barker was really, really qualified to talk about. And he can use Sony cameras as a default to show people how to do that. So as a result, people are getting answers to their questions from Nigel, they know how to take better photos, and then they're clicking through to buy the camera that he's using. So it works out really, really well, and it's all done with earned media. Now, Joe Penna was also in this series, and he is another extreme influencer on YouTube. And we used him for the Sony Bloggy, which is the competitor to the Flip, which, poor Flip, bye-bye Flip. But good thing for Sony, I guess, because the Bloggy will now start to take over that particular market. And Joe is also a YouTube star and definitely an influencer in his own right. And he's a digital filmmaker and musician. So when we found terms like how to make a video go viral or how to connect my video with social media that people were trying to do, Joe is the perfect influencer to bring that type of expertise to market with our videos. Veronica, now we know that she has an amazing following on Twitter, and that is one of the reasons that we initially found her. She also has a history with Sony. However, what really made her appealing to us is that she's actually a tech geek. So when we found some terms like how to connect HD, how to make your home wireless, how to explain HD, what's the difference between HD and 3D, yes, people are actually searching on that in large volumes. We actually contacted Veronica to see if she would be interested. And I'm going to let Veronica tell you a little bit about why this particular opportunity with Sony was appealing to her.
Well, one of the things I liked about this project is that it gave me an opportunity to reach an audience and explain technology to them in a way that was simple and very informative. And I liked working with them too because they let me have full run of the scripts. I got to see the scripts before we got into the studio to record, and I was able to have input and be able to talk about what I felt was important to say to the audience that they were trying to reach. And you can't just, come to someone and say, hey, this is the message we want to put out there. It needs to fit with the audience that they talk to already. My audience knows if I'm saying something that's not in my authentic, exactly. And they can tell immediately. And that's why I don't do projects that don't feel authentic to me and aren't relevant to the audience that I'm already talking to. And so it was important for me especially to put content out there that was relevant to them, that was helpful to them, informative to them, and was not going to be disingenuous in any way.
That's great. How many of you guys were at South by Southwest? Anybody at South by Southwest? Did anybody see Kevin Pollak and that panel where he talked about the new age of actors getting involved and they don't just show up on the set and read their lines and then go away, that it's a much more inclusive process about developing the content up front and then carrying it through, 12 months really is what we're looking at by the time that the video product itself takes over. So that's what we did with Veronica. That's what we did with Joe. Whenever we look for an influencer, we want to make sure that we keep it in their character because we do want it to be authentic, again, because we're talking about editorial content as opposed to branded entertainment. I think Brian had a couple other things that he wanted us to go over in this particular session, which was using the influencers, which we just talked about, but also about how you measure ROI, and there was another one, KPW? Is that right? Yes, KPI, thank you. Clearly I'm a creative director and not a media person. But anyway, ROI is really easy for us to measure when it's an e-commerce client, right? Because we set up special landing pages. It's not hard for us to connect these dots. And we can definitely see lifts when social media happens. So we're big advocates of using video and really creating that strong engagement with social media. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. One of the things that I would say is also fascinating around that is Veronica has, I think, what is it, 1.2, 1.3 million followers? 1.6, sorry, low, too low. 1.6 million followers, and you heard her up here with the following like that. She wanted to keep things authentic, right? When I got off a plane recently somewhere in Europe, the first thing that I was greeted with was a big poster of George Clooney enjoying a cup of Nescafe. And I wondered, does that dude actually like that stuff, or is he just taking a check to promote the product? And that's the difference between endorsements of past and working together in a collaborative fashion with brands in the future, where influencers are actually stakeholders, and they are holding on to their community as something as sacred, not just as an audience. Now, I want to bring up our final speaker for this session, Max Heiborn. He's the brand strategy director of Goodby Silverstein Partners. Max, come on up. Share with us your wisdom. I will get your presentation ready to go, I hope. There we go. All right.
Hi, everybody. My name's Max. I'm with Goodby, like you said, and I'm here to tell you a little story about this little idea we had for Tostitos, a Frito-Lay client of ours. It's called Reunite America. There's kind of three things that I hope you take away from this. I thought of them as I was going over this last night. One is this idea that behavior trumps any technology that we could think of. Two, we kind of had this interesting way of testing this idea that kind of tested whether we'd be able to reproduce this idea once we had it. And the third was just kind of a basic principle of being a good social media marketer, which is kind of actively listening and not just waiting for your turn to speak. So here was our client's question. How come my brand doesn't have a social media presence? I think I've heard that a lot before, but for Tostitos it was even kind of more striking because within the Frito-Lay family, you could argue that they're arguably the most social brand. They actually don't even make a single serving size of Tostitos chips. This idea of gathering around the bowl and breaking bread and commensality is inherent with the brand, and it's even in the logo, which this blew my mind the first time I was revealed this, but it's two guys sharing a chip over a bowl of dip. So they were kind of like, why don't we have a social media presence? And we were like, well, I don't know. You kind of like to do just straight up advertising, and you've had a billion taglines over the past couple of years. And I like to look at whatever happens between you got Tostitos, you got a party, and when you've got Tostitos, you've got a party is, oh, meh. I'm going to restart my computer. I know, huh? I don't. Sorry.
So while Max is starting his system, let's take some questions. But it depends. Is it a solid-state drive? Because we might only be able to take a second of questions.
No, it's not.
Any questions up until this point? Yes. So his question is there a resource to find new media celebrities, influencers, to help you make decisions about who to work with? Do you want to talk a little bit about how you, yeah. Do you have a handheld mic over here? Let me borrow this. Let's see if this works. Otherwise you can talk into my lapel.
So I get approached about a lot of that kind of stuff, and it's really important, I think, for someone who's reaching out to influencers to really know who you're asking before you do the asking. I almost get upset in a way when people reach out to me about products that I have absolutely no relation with whatsoever, and it's like, why would you even think I'd be a good person to talk about this to my audience? So make sure you reach out to the right people for the right job. Kind of do your research first. See what they're talking about in their online spaces before you make that initial contact.
I do this on a nearly weekly basis, right? Some brand that we're working for, we're trying to find the right people. Everybody, now we've had some success with Veronica and Nigel, and everybody wants the same thing. Find me my internet star that I don't have to pay SAG rates to, right? It goes on and on and on. And there are tons of editorial. If you just Google, actually I'm going to go up here because I'm sorry, my back is to these people. If you just Google, right, you're going to find like the list of who has the top Twitter followings or who has the biggest Facebook pages, or, you know, you can always find those lists. And it doesn't hurt to dig around in them. But I actually, and my team, what we do is we really think much more about, we knew Veronica was technology, and we knew that we needed somebody for HD TV. So the first thing is to make sure that you find the right fit, which is exactly what she's talking about. And then I do think you have to develop a conversation. So to my knowledge, there's no place or talent agency, if you will, but a lot of people do have agents too. So are we ready? The other thing I would tell you, I have a very funny story, as long as, do we need a couple minutes? When we went to talk to Joe Penna, who his videos get millions and millions of views on YouTube. And my colleague Jackie, who's sitting right here, and I went to talk to Joe. And we had done a lot of research on Joe. We knew he had a little dog. We knew he had a partner, Sarah, who's his agent, blah, 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 blah. And I swear to you, in the breakfast meeting, the point where he decided to do this is we had a video about how to take a funny pet video. And Jackie said to him, "I can get you a pony." And he looked at us, and he was like, "A pony?" And he's like, "Nobody's ever offered me a pony before." So think about that person, right, and what is of interest to him. And he's a real filmmaker, and he wants to do really unique stuff. So the pony was of interest to him. There we go.
Guess that is some solid advice. The other thing I would say is that there are some tools that are starting to emerge to help facilitate this. Tools such as what is it? A company called M-Blast, M as in Mary Blast. They have a product called Impact. Tracker helps you track down these influencers as well, based on what type of campaign you have. Additionally, there are services, this new type of agency, for example, like the agency that represented Charlie Sheen, Adley, and then also IZEA. They're starting to work with personalities. And then there's also, of course, traditional agencies that are now starting to recognize the value of these individuals. But nothing, as Jodi said, really replicates your homework, because you have to find a very meaningful reason to work with these individuals because they hold their audience sacred. How you doing, Max? You ready?
We're back.
All right. Are you ready to get some Tostitos and get a party going?
Yeah, we are.
All right.
So they've had a lot of taglines, and that actually works great for traditional advertising and marketing. But when it comes to social, I think we all kind of realize, this is a great quote from Hugh McLeod, that if you talk to people the way advertising talk to people, they'd punch you in the face. And we used a couple of the tools that were mentioned earlier, Social Mention, a lot of the free tools, to find out the conversation that was happening around Tostitos. And it was pretty neutral, and that was terrifying to us, because we like to say that the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And it was very, very neutral. People didn't have a lot to say. They kind of enjoyed our chips. But that doesn't do a lot when there's around 250 other competitors in the unflavored tortilla chip space, and I think all of them cost less than we do. So we needed to do something and get people involved. So our questions back to the client were, what are people interested in that we could kind of reasonably talk about? And then how can we be interesting to these people? And then ultimately, what could we make for these people? What kind of gifts could we give them, and really participate in that value exchange with these consumers that we're trying to create this emotional connection with, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that's going to get them to spend $1 more for the same corn, oil, and salt. So the first insight we kind of landed on, I think everyone kind of intuits this, but it's really powerful that people are naturally social creatures. It's in our DNA. Knowing happy people makes you happy. More friends leads to longer lives, and social interaction betters your health. These are all things that we know to be true. And then looking further in this space, looking at what our audience might have been interested in, we stumbled upon this idea that reunion videos are kind of this wealth of captivating content that not a lot of advertisers have looked at, but consumers embrace these things kind of almost as much as hilarious or wildly unbelievable videos, and we do have Christian the Lion in there as a reunion, because I think that does count. And they're especially relevant to our target. So we've defined a social conductor psychographically as kind of this the kind of person who likes to throw parties and bring people together, and they're really that social connector. And they actively seek out this content, and then they use social media to create experiences, and if nothing stands in the way, it ends up in a real-life connection. But a lot of times, something stands in the way. And that has led to another insight that we had, that over the years has been this declining social capital where people are just seeing each other face to face a lot less than they used to. And it's a significant trend because while social media and technology is great, it's that face-to-face interaction which I think really defines who we are as humans. So there's just a lot of great facts here that in 2006, Americans had on average only 2 close friends as opposed to 3 2 decades ago. So it's sad to think that you lost a friend over that time. And then 1 in 4 said they have no one to confide in, compared to 1 in 10 in 1985. So something's happening that we wanted to be a part of, because we felt pretty strongly that connections are an endangered species. And that was something that Tostitos felt that they could stand for, because for 30 years they've been bringing people together over the bowl of chips, strangers who'd never met each other, who met at a party and started up a conversation. This was something that was kind of inherent in their product and felt true enough for us to explore. So if connections are an endangered species, we decided that there needed to be an app for that. So we created this Facebook application called Reunite America. And the opening line for this idea was the idea that Facebook is great, but face-to-face is better. So the premise of Reunite America is that we basically asked the nation, who do you miss? Tell us who you miss, tell us a story about this person, and then share it with all of your friends, share it with the community, and people would vote on these stories, then ultimately stories would bubble to the top, and we would choose people to be reunited, capture that footage in a real low-budget, lo-fi way so it felt more real and raw and emotional, and then celebrate that reunion and basically build this positive feedback loop of building an audience, engaging them, reuniting a lucky few, and then celebrating their reunion. So it was interesting to get the client to acknowledge that while this idea had a launch, it didn't have an end date. And I think a lot of clients are used to thinking in terms of campaigns where there's a beginning and an end. And ultimately, the stories of the people we reunited became our message. It was really hard for us to script the kind of emotional drama and resonance that happens when you reunite with someone that you haven't seen in forever, but actually people are very emotive and capable of having this happen naturally. So after we filmed the videos, we'd push them out via Facebook and other relevant media channels, and that content basically became our content and carried our call to action and drove our participation. And throughout, we called it a people-powered movement, and we put varying levels of engagement because we know not everyone is going to go through the process of submitting a story, because it does take a lot of thought and effort. We made it as simple and intuitive as possible, but it still takes a while to craft a 1,000-word story about who you miss. So we added in functionality so people could just send a little gift to the loved ones they miss the most. Of course, everyone could vote on the stories and read and try and have a voice in making those real-life reunions happen. And then ultimately, the most affinity-building aspect of this would be the actual reunion videos, where you could share in these moments of togetherness that Tostitos created by watching these videos on Facebook or YouTube. So we got to this idea of how are we going to actually do this thing, because we kind of had this idea and we needed a way to test it. So what we did was, we work at a fairly large agency, and we sent an email around internally basically beta testing the program, asking people who did they miss, and then selecting a few lucky people, giving them flip cams, sending a producer with a few of these people, and testing out different scenarios of how we could actually make this content come to life. We asked the client for $1,000 or $2,000 to make this happen. And I think it was probably the smartest thing that we did, because it gave us a lot of faith in this idea and this program that we'd started. So I'm going to show you the first video, one of the test videos. It's called Michael and Katie, and I'll just let the video speak for itself. But another important part of this test was whenever you start an idea like this, you kind of need content. You don't want people to show up to a party and no one's there. So these tests actually provided us with a couple videos to get this thing going. So this is Michael and Katie.
Hello, my name is Michael Witten. I'm originally from Richmond, Virginia.
My name is Katie Briggs, and I live in the fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. This is the Michael that I remember when we were in middle school.
Katie was actually the first person I ever came out to.
He was able to confide in me, and I really feel like we bonded.
I could not be more excited to see Katie Briggs tomorrow. She means so much to me.
And I can't wait. I cannot tell you how excited I am.
So that was how we kicked off this program, and then it got going. We had a lot of good buzz. We launched it at the Fiesta Bowl, which Tostitos was a sponsor of. But then momentum died down a bit, so we started to think of ways of how can we amplify and optimize this people-powered movement a bit more, knowing that the client really didn't give us a lot of media money to play with. So we just kind of leaned into the fact that since we'd been engaging people on a Facebook page, which Tostitos had never done before, there were just a lot of everyday learning opportunities out there. And by reading the posts and the comments that people were writing about who they missed and why, we garnered a lot of valuable insights around the reasons why people have been separated, why people are in need of a reunion. And it just became clear that there were certain life stages that led to kind of the separation or this coming together again. So graduations, marriages, and births. Millions of people pass through these life stages every year, and millions more of their friends were affected. So that just gave us kind of a structured outreach plan for PR that we're implementing right now, and just finding out these different resonant ways to connect with partners that would be interested in the things that we're trying to do. Telling an engagement story, just pure quantification kind of belies and obscures the emotional journey we've been on with our client and the agency, just reading all of these stories. But from an engagement standpoint, we felt good about what we've done. And we're so excited for the next wave of the program because there's little things like this. We just got this today from Janet Johnson, a friend of Ron and Andy, a reunion we just made happen where Ron is Andy's father and they hadn't seen each other. I don't think they've actually ever met, and they just recently were brought together based on this program. So, that's why we and the clients have been so excited about this program and about the possibilities of what you can execute in social media in a real human and organic way. I think everyone who's touched this has really felt like this is one of the, nicest, most human things they've done in advertising. So just the last little bit will be from the latest reunion that we've made happen. It's called Five Sisters. They're 5 adopted sisters, and they've never met. And this is a little teaser of the first time they've met.
In 24 hours, I will be meeting all of my biological sisters.
We have the same mother, the same biological mother, but different fathers. So we are sisters from different misters.
Somehow they got on that little computer of theirs, and the internet reached out and touched me.
Today we're going to meet all of us for the first time.
I don't know what's going to happen. I'm excited to find out.
So that full video will be out in a couple days. Just really quick, we just realized that if we focused on human behavior and what people really need and then use technology to build something that would deliver that, testing the videos in a sort of can we make this work sort of way, it led us to actually and realize that we should invest in maybe an additional camera or two so we could create kind of that mosaic effect that you saw there. And then just this idea of, being a good person as a brand and actively listening and responding to consumers as they're engaging with you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Max. If you want to just hang up on stage, we can bring everybody back up here for a quick question and answer session. We'll just, to get things going here, the next question, I have another copy of Paperweight or my book, however you want to view it. So who has the first question? Yes, sir.
I think they realized the need to make a connection with people in order to sell more chips because there's just a simple value equation at play where they cost more, and there's really no other way to demand a higher premium than to have people form that emotional connection. So we tried to keep the couponing and the selling out of the experience. It's hard. They want to do it, but you have to tell them that if you're at a party, the first thing you probably shouldn't do is go up to someone and ask for their business card or start asking for money unless it's that kind of party. So.
Any other answers to that question?
I'll take just one crack at it, because we got the same type of questions from Sony, quite frankly. Sony products are more expensive. And so, and I'm sure just like Max and his team were trying to reach people at a different level before you get into the chip aisle. That's exactly what we were doing. We were trying to reach those people, and social media really helped us do it, before they get down to, oh my gosh, I can save 99 cents, you know, by clicking over here.
All right, next question. Yeah, right here. I'm looking out. Yeah.
Much less.
Max, can you repeat the question and the answer?
The question was, was the budget similar, more or less, to a traditional campaign? It was much less. I mean, that was basically probably the cost of producing a single commercial and never airing it. So, in terms of quantity of eyeballs, we didn't knock it out of the park because we didn't have a lot of money, but we have a lot of faith that every eyeball that we've gotten has been worth it.
Yeah, I wonder if sisters from different misters will become a hashtag. I'd actually never heard that before. Any other questions? Yes, okay.
It was concentrated primarily on Facebook through just Facebook ads because we knew that was where the bulk of the activity was happening. We timed it to launch with the BCS game, which viewership is like 25 million, so that was a great boost initially. And we seeded the video through TubeMocal. I think we looked into using Feed Company as a seeding partner. And forgetting, we had someone else in the mix, but I'm forgetting. But we did have a plan to basically build the audience, bring people in, gather the stories, and then once we were able to produce the content, that's when we moved into the video distribution phase of the campaign.
Max, you mentioned Facebook ads and timing. Did you learn anything about keywords and the need for changing those at all in terms of frequency?
Yeah, as we'd go through it, we'd just see which ones would resonate more. I think words like, phrases like, who was your first high school kiss worked really well because it just kind of triggered that memory and it prompted people to think of a very specific person in their past.
I'm thinking about it right now.
But targeting against chips doesn't really get you where you need to go with that idea.
All right, good. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Initially, there was an urge to define what sort of connections we were going after, but I think we helped them realize that the kind of connections you want to go after are the most emotional and memorable, and you don't want to censor it because you don't want to kind of like exclude an opportunity. And they were very open, and we've had some crazy stories come through that they've been okay with. So it's been a really fun. We've gotten really good at Google stalking people once they've submitted their stories, just to see if there's anything a little untoward, but normally the clients have been pretty open with the stories we've recommended.
Yes.
Yeah, that last one. So the way we structured this was, I think 3 to 4 of the videos had a documentarian with them, but the remaining videos are just done with flip cams. So it's just a nice looking video, so it's fun to show it.
And for the film, the question was on user-generated content versus produced reality-style television. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the focus groups are great because they allow you to go really deep with a small subset. What I like about the social media listening intelligence side is you get surprised. And I think that's really powerful. You find the things that you wouldn't have asked a question on. I love Max's example because it really drove off of a kind of consumer insight that was measurable. How many people are talking about this? And then there are data points that drive off of that. So I think a lot of it is using it to test the hypothesis, see what people are talking about, and then see if enough people are talking about it to make it meaningful to your campaign.
Any other takes? No? We'll take one more question and then wrap it up. So any other questions? Am I missing anything? No? All right. Well, with that, thank you very much to everyone who presented here today.